This episode is supported by Little Saints. More than a non-alcoholic beverage, it's a mushroom-infused cocktail that elevates the soul. Use code TheMothers20 for 20% off at littlesaints.com. That's TheMothers20 for 20% off at littlesaints.com. Now, enjoy the episode. Hello, friends. It's Sara Brown, and welcome back to The Mothers. I wanted to start today's episode by inviting you on a little trip down memory lane. Take a moment and remember back to when you were maybe 9 and your parents invited friends over to the house for dinner. These people were giants. They had real clothes. They had jackets with ties around the waist. They wore shoes that weren't sneakers, sometimes even heels that made a very specific light clonking sound when they hit the floor. They wore makeup, some of them at least. They had loud laughs, mustaches, and glasses. They referred to things and names of people that you pretended to know. And when they asked you a question, they leaned over just so and looked down at you to hear your response. Not intentionally in a condescending way, but in a way that reminded you of your size. And you would try to stand up straighter in a futile attempt to see eye to eye. And whatever you said back, they would chuckle in an often self-satisfying way. When my parents had friends over, I've come to realize it wasn't entirely your typical gathering of adults. They were intellectuals, academics, writers, serious people who thought they were serious. The kind that would think of a Pulitzer or a MacArthur Fellowship, aka the Genius Grant, as real possibilities, dare I say, expectations. But in the middle of this group of serious giants was one with a real laugh who said real things. She turned out to be Gish Jen, the one that wasn't afraid. Gish is now one of the leading American writers of the 21st century. John Updike, author of the Rabbit series, famously named her as his successor. She's the author of 6 novels, including the widely known and widely taught Typical American and Mona in the Promised Land, 2 books of stories and 2 works of nonfiction. Her writing has been chosen for the Best American Short Stories 5 times, including the Best American Short Stories of the Century. She's received fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation, the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study, the Fulbright Foundation, among others, and she's a mother of 2. She's so cool that Genius Grant, the MacArthur Fellowship, she was appointed to their board and recently stepped down because she felt like she'd, quote, contributed everything she was going to contribute. And time is precious. Today, Gish is here to discuss her latest novel, Bad, Bad Girl, which is a genre-bending tale of essentially her fraught relationship with her own mother, who emigrated from China to America in the 40s, a time of immense geopolitical and social upheaval. I can't recommend it highly enough. In our conversation, we explore the truthiest truths of our lives, the ones that matter most to Gish, what it's like to yearn for an intimate connection to a mother unwilling or unable to provide it, and how to break generational cycles of trauma as a parent. We also talk about one of the best and most human things I learned about Gish. To this day, she still struggles with whether she chose a profession that makes enough of a difference in the world. Gish is all these fancy smart things, lives in Cambridge surrounded by Harvard, with all sorts of institutions to back her up. And I almost want to say, in spite of that, she has the ability to write a story you actually want to read. The kind that makes you laugh, that says real things, the kind that isn't afraid. I hope you'll find our interview delivers some of the same. So please enjoy my conversation with Gish Jen.
In the middle of breakfast. And
I'm so sorry.
Oh,
Do
no.
you really want to do it now? Because we could do it tomorrow.
No. We're just
Fuck it,
gonna,
let's do it live.
we're gonna do it now. Clock. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, good.
Do you have an hour-ish?
Yeah, I
Is that
do.
okay?
I do.
Oh
I
my
do.
gosh. Gish.
But my
This
husband
was so kind of you.
Are you kidding? My pleasure.
And you can hear me.
Yes.
I'm in this like silly getup with headphones and all the gear. Fantastic. Wow. What a triumph. I mean, I feel like we worked very hard to get here, so we got to make it worth it, you know? So we're here to talk about you and this incredible book that you wrote that I started reading months ago and then was like, I need it to be fresh in my head. So I read it literally in the last 48 hours. And so it is all in the brain. And I feel like the first thing I want to do when I finished it was like to just give you a hug when I saw you next.
Thank you.
And then my other anecdote was I woke up this morning and I was trying to be all organized for this conversation. I had to get the kids out to school, and the littlest one is 4, going off to preschool. She has to be there by 8:45 to 9. Had everything arranged to make this all happen so that we could be back here on time. And of course, I walk into her room and she has just crap all over. She had like just the biggest blowout of all time, and just in a way that is triumphant, like almost a victory. And I turned her out and go, bad girl. So yeah, we're all in the shit. It's great. Amazing.
Thanks.
But despite all that, we like to start our conversations giving our guests an opportunity to share their story, which I think is a interesting, silly, maybe different question, given that you in many ways wrote your story. That's what we're going to talk about. But that's this version of your story, and maybe this is the version of your story. Bad Girl is certainly anchored around your relationship with your mother, which might be that might be how you would tell your story. But I am curious and worth asking the question of, like, if you independently wanted to describe how you got to the Gish of today, is there a version?
You want this version? I mean that quite sincerely, because there are many versions of this.
Yes. Yes.
I think like a 7-minute version.
For sure. Yes. Yeah. That's great.
Okay. So, I would say that, I was born in 1955, which seems like a long time ago now. And I was born to Chinese immigrant parents. And of course, at the time, my father wasn't legal. He's an undocumented immigrant, and there were very, 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 very few Chinese immigrants in their generation. So this is, they came over, when they came over, there were like 200 Chinese immigrants a year or something like that. So they're a very small minority. And I lived in many places where no one had ever seen anybody who looked like me. So we were very, very isolated. We did not grow up in a Chinatown, because we're not Cantonese or Shanghainese. So, I grew up in a kind of funny way. I will say that weirdly, for a writer, it was kind of great in the sense that, I grew up in what sociologists today would call a structural hole, meaning that the bad news is that I was really quite neglected, and my parents were just so overwhelmed with dealing with America and, where they had never intended to end up. They were so overwhelmed that this whole stereotype of, the Asian parents who are on top of you and watching every math score and that kind of thing, my parents are way too overwhelmed to do anything even slightly like that, It's interesting that you mentioned that your own children are little and getting off to school. I mean, my parents are so confused that the first day of kindergarten, they sent my sister to the wrong, there's a morning kindergarten or an afternoon kindergarten, and they sent her to the wrong session, and that's kind of part and parcel of the whole thing. They were just, they had no idea what was going on. But that meant that I didn't grow up with a lot of expectations, you know what I mean? So it wasn't like, later on they get all these ideas like you should go to medical school, but it really, that didn't kind of happen until very late. So in a funny kind of way, today when we're trying to have all that unstructured time for kids, that's what I had, so we had woods behind our house, not because my parents had any idea like, oh, we should be close to nature or anything. It was just that, it was going to be developed and hadn't been developed yet. So, there was a dirt road and it was all woods. And that meant that, I spent a lot of time back there just playing, and imagining things and making up stories and having a great time. So it was both a kind of impoverished childhood, but also kind of a very fortunate childhood at the same time. I had very little exposure to books. Again, my mother didn't have the wherewithal to read to me. She was also very, she thought that it was bad for girls to be too smart. So they figured out early on that I was a smart kid, and that was a bad thing. As you can tell from it was a bad
Although
thing.
she loved reading as a child also. So
she herself had loved reading, but she had grown up with this whole idea that it's bad for girls to be smart. So she did not encourage it. But she did take us to the library, to the public library, like twice a year, And of course, I would come back with, like all these books. But again, nobody was directing my reading, so I would take up books on topology.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there was nobody said you're in second grade, you shouldn't be taking out a book on typology. Nobody explained it to me either.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in a funny kind of way, I was very free,
Yeah.
I see now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, fast forward, we start out in a classic immigrant progression. I was born on Long Island, then we moved to Queens, which is a very, very immigrant, low rent place, and we moved to Yonkers to our own house, and then we moved to Scarsdale. We're right up the train line in New York, into the suburbs.
Yeah.
And so by the time I was in high school, I was at Scarsdale High School, and Scarsdale High School was one of the best schools in the country, So in that way too, I was incredibly lucky. Incredibly lucky. I mean, I just had incredible teachers, and that's where I fell in love with literature. Unfortunately then, but fortunately for us, a lot of German Jews who had gotten caught in the war, but who had managed to make it to the United States. People who really should have been college professors, but because things had been so disrupted, they were all there teaching at Scarsdale High School, and we had them for professors. For teachers, we were just incredibly lucky. In any case, so then flash forward, I managed to get myself into Harvard, which was not so hard then, and
give yourself credit.
No, truthfully, it really is much harder now.
That is true. Both can be true.
Much harder. I don't know. It's a whole other thing now. But back then, it wasn't that big a deal. And again, great teachers. But it was at Harvard. I mean, I certainly, I had done a little writing for fun, but it had never, ever, 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 ever occurred to me that somebody like me could become a writer. I had never heard of such a thing. It was just not within my realm of possibility.
Yeah.
But I was at Harvard, so I was beginning to get the message that maybe I should be pre-med. That didn't work out very well for me.
I had the exact same experience as you, actually, when I was reading it. I was like, oh, C in chemistry, maybe I'm not going to be a pre-med student. Meanwhile, this English stuff seems to be going pretty well.
Exactly. Some of these guys, you walk in, you kind of all look the same, and then it turns out that they are really good at math. And it is dawning on you that you did fine on the SATs, but you are not that good at math.
Yes.
And you definitely know nothing about biology. And also, they're very disciplined in a way that I really was. I mean, that sounds like a funny thing because now I'm on my 10th book, and obviously I'm disciplined in my own way.
Yes.
But I'm very disciplined when, give me a blank page, and I can sit there diligently and just write page after page after page.
Yeah.
Give me any kind of form, and I just can't do it. Give me a chapter I'm supposed to learn, and I just can't get around to it. And anyways, I took this class, English 283, really by accident when I was a junior. That was Robert Fitzgerald's class, where I met your mother.
Wow. Okay, great.
And,
yes.
She probably knew what the class was when she signed up for it. And I didn't, because I'm the daughter. I had no idea what was going on. But as you remember, it's a class in versification. And I thought, I'm an English major, and I don't really understand why poetry has to be written in those little lines. And if I take this class, I will finally understand it. And that was true. And actually, I feel like it should be required for all English majors, honestly. But anyway, the first poem was in Catalan henicasyllables. And I loved it. I sat down, I was writing, and I told my roommate, I said, God, I love this. If I could do this forever, I would. And, I said that, but people like me didn't become poets,
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, but Fitzgerald was the one who kind of sat me down, and he sort of said, because he said, why are you pre-med?
Yeah.
Which is a good question, which I could not really answer. And he did sort of say, he said, you should do something with words. And he really wanted me to be a poet. But since I seem to be so kind of resistant to that idea, he said, if you're not going to be a poet, you should at least go into publishing. And he got me a job in New York.
And that, to interject, sorry, a little bit, I loved because how you described this felt very familiar to me, where you described in your book talking about kind of this moment and how you thought a career in writing or poetry was frivolous, and that you had a duty to do something more I don't know, important, like become a doctor or something. And that everyone had sacrificed to get you to this point. And so there's some,
Yeah,
I
you
don't
have
know,
some
navel
obligation.
gazing nature of writing. How did you was it Fitzgerald that got you over that? Or was it the publishing component that got you to take this seriously?
I don't think I ever did take it serious. I mean, in
Oh,
other words,
good.
I think I struggle with it to this day. Do you
I
know what I
love
mean?
that. Yep.
I struggle with it to this day because this is really flash forwarding in a big way. But
Yep.
I was on the board of the MacArthur Foundation just recently. Where I was actually doing like something really helpful for the world.
Yeah.
And once again, I hit the kind of obligation versus writing a conflict. And once again, I stepped down from the board, and that was really tough for me.
Yeah.
Again, because but at this time, I think I was helped by the fact that, I'm 70 now, and I understand that I don't have unlimited years. I mean, I
Yeah.
think if I didn't have that understanding, I don't think I could have done it. But because I can see that, and frankly, writing these books, you have to have all your cells firing,
Sure. Yeah.
and I don't know how many more years that'll be true. I'm very, very lucky right now. It's true, but I don't know, 5, 7 years from now, I don't know. And I have books I want to write, and
Yeah.
so that was helpful. But I still ask myself. I mean, it was very hard. I
Yeah.
mean, I still struggled with, well, could I be helping the world?
Mm.
Luckily for me, I don't think I was that effective a board member, and I actually think that it would fine without me.
And I think you're helping the world with your words, but
I think I said a few helpful things, but
I'm sure.
I had said everything that I had really contributed, everything that I was going to contribute, and
Good.
and I don't think, and they had many, many able people. So that's another thing. I felt, I felt the opposite of irreplaceable.
Yeah.
People were very nice to me when I left, but I mean, I did not feel that I was some essential part of this organization.
Oh, no.
I was helpful enough.
So publishing, you eventually went to, I actually didn't know this. I loved this.
Yeah.
We have similar, but totally obviously different paths. You wound up at Stanford to get a business degree, which I was like, what? Tell me that. And then fell in love in California, which I also fell in love in California, and then kind of, I don't know, reoriented, or I think that's a fascinating move. And then going from there to the Iowa Writers Workshop, which is the gold medal, gold star, the optimal place to be. Unless you would say now, is that also an easy place to get into? Not a big deal.
It was much easier back then. It really was. I mean, MFA programs were a relatively new thing, and I don't think it was particularly that big a deal, honestly. But you're right. I think that I applied to business school really as a lark, because at that point, so anyway, Fitzgerald got me into publishing. And then while I was in publishing, Doubleday paid for you to take any kind of course you wanted. And so I started taking writing courses down at the new school. And so I was getting the idea that I was actually interested in writing. I also had two, writing friends. One was my boyfriend and one was my best friend. And I still talk to my best friend all the time. And she's still interested in writing, as am I.
Yeah.
That was a really kind of heavenly time, looking back. But I thought that I had ended up in publishing. I was neither doing what I really wanted to do, nor was I making any money, and I did not have family money behind me, And so I applied to business school really kind of on a lark. I mean, I just sort of said, well, I've already been pre-law and pre-med, so that was business school. And so, it was just the funniest thing. And then I got in. And but it's funny because I actually managed to get into both Harvard and Stanford.
I believe it. I think you're smart. I think your mom and your dad were right.
This is really unbelievable. I mean, truly for me, this is really unbelievable. And but I went to Stanford because I knew they had a good writing program. So I was pretty confused. So I was the only person at Stanford Business School because Stanford had a good writing program.
Yeah.
And I only lasted a year, as you know.
Yep.
And then I went to China. Yeah.
Then you went to China.
Then I went to China.
You did? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I left that out of my book because it was gonna be such a long.
I was gonna say, did I miss a chapter?
It's a whole it's a novel. It is
correct. True. We'll talk about that also. Yes.
Are compressed, and many things are left out as well.
Yes.
And I left out China because it was just too much. I mean, that's 6 books in itself, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I have gotten many books out of it, as you know.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So it's not an easy subject to kind of take up lightly and then
Sure.
drop. Anyway, and then I went to Stanford Business School where I met my husband. Yeah, and then I dropped out of business school, and then I went. Oh, I'm sorry, I did business school, and then China, and then Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would seem that it would seem that I had figured out what I was doing. Right? I mean, I did well at Iowa. I mean, it's not like I was getting messages like you are in the wrong place. Oh no, quite the contrary. I did well. But I guess because, I'm a daughter of immigrants, I had so much self-doubt.
Yeah.
I just, like I say, the same part of me finally at 70, I can find
Mhm.
the Garth report.
Yeah.
But, I've struggled with the same question over and over again and over and over again. It's hard for me to pick writing, and it's not because it's very individualistic. Now, I've managed to square that circle for myself in terms of, I write about myself and I'm always writing about the world.
Yeah.
And that's very important to me. I would never write something that was only about myself.
Yeah.
And that's because I come from my home culture is interdependent. It is not individualistic.
Right.
And I'm fundamentally very uncomfortable with these kinds of activities
Yeah.
that seem so self-centered. And by the way, that do legitimately eat up a lot of family resources and don't give back to the family.
Yes. Yes.
And that's true. I'm aware of that to this day. And certainly, and I know we'll get to the child rearing years.
Yeah.
But boy, those years, I would never look at my babysitting bill because I knew that if I saw the bill that I would not be able to write. Knowing that I was having to pay for those hours and that I was using those hours to write, I knew I would not be able to do that.
Wow.
I knew that I was taking away from the family. I was taking the mother out of the house,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I wasn't giving anything back. I mean, I was
Yeah.
sure what the return would be. I mean, we can get to this. I'm sort of skipping ahead. Anyway,
No, it's great. Yeah.
so Iowa continued to have crises about it. Moved back east with my husband. Continued to have crises. Continued to think maybe I should go into antique dealing. Maybe I should open a bookstore. Maybe I should become an architect. I mean, I have tried on every profession possible. It
Yeah.
turns out very luckily for me, I'm not very good at almost anything else. And, so I kind
Yeah.
of got with writing, but it has been a struggle. And, I know you're particularly interested in the mothering piece. And, it was hard enough to not do some of these things that seemed more reasonable, at some level.
Mm-hmm.
But to actually cut into my kids' mother, into
Yeah.
their time
Yeah.
for my work. I think it's one of the reasons, oddly enough, it made me very productive because I felt so guilty about taking those hours away that I would just go to my office to
Yeah.
I mean, I really worked. I mean, I work hard, I work fast.
Yeah.
But I did that. I would say I was mostly motivated by guilt.
Yeah. That makes sense. We hear a lot of the, there's guilt, which I want to find a different word for it because it feels, implies you're doing something wrong, which maybe in this case, you actually do feel like you're doing something wrong, but you're not. You're fulfilling your identity, your purpose, you're generating meaning and ultimately income. But I get why maybe you do feel guilt as you were describing it.
Well, it's not clearer, especially in the beginning, that you're going to be doing any of those things.
Yeah.
Today, now that I'm on my 10th, now I've publishing my 10th book.
Yeah.
Now and so many people come up to me and, I mean so much to so many people that now I can see that I actually play a socially useful role to many people, actually. And on many different levels. And moreover, now I actually make some money. And now I actually, I can see that my daughter is so happy that I am a writer.
Yeah.
And that her mother has a profession and that, and I can see that in the end, it turned out to be quite a gift to her. But I couldn't have known that early on.
Yeah.
You cannot know that in the end, it's going to be a gift.
Sure. Yeah.
And in the end, honestly, you don't know.
Yeah. It is. I mean, I think a lot of work that people take on, there are sort of risks of going off to start a new business, but all of those suggest that there's sort of a shorter runway to knowing if it's good, if it's working. I
Right.
feel like with writing, I mean, some people, in some ways in my presence right now, some people get lucky and eventually they sort of pop quickly, but it's a slog to build. It's more because you're refining your craft as you go. So it's a long time to find your voice, which is an easy way to say it. It's more complicated than that. But so the risk is a long-term concern. I could see why for a long time you were like, let's try anything else.
Yeah, and everything else, is simpler, honestly, it's easier. I will say,
Yeah.
we had a few of these, gigs of various kinds that seem like
Yeah.
real gigs, and it's you spend a lot of time going to meetings, and I mean,
Right.
you might put, you're paying attention, and might pitch in a few things, but it's nowhere near as hard as writing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and writing is really hard. And you're right. Over the years, it's not just that you have to find your voice, but technically you get better, and you probably can really see that in this book. That technically I'm a lot better than I ever was.
It's phenomenal.
Well,
Eat, that's just big chunky bites of goodness in so many ways. And I'm going to read one of them to you in a second, but yes.
but it takes, and what have I been? I've been at this for like 40 years now or something, 35.
Yeah.
It takes decades
Yeah.
to acquire that level of technical, um, familiarity. I almost sort of say, but it takes time to hone your craft.
Yeah. Yeah.
And who could know sitting down that 35 years later you'll still be growing? Who could know that?
Sure.
I'm 70, that I'm still growing. If that turns out to be, the greatest gift that I could give my daughter.
Yes.
It turns out, because she
Yes.
was very similar, I know.
Yes. Yes.
And it is a gift, as opposed to, a mom who kind of started out, she kind of lost her nerve, and then, we always have this kind of sad narrative,
Yep.
and it's, from the daughter's point of view, I think it must seem a little bit like, you really can't win, you know what I mean? Because things are too stacked against women, and you know what I mean? It's too hard. I
Yes.
think that, for the daughters to have a mother who actually managed, who hung in there and faced a lot of uncertainty and did succeed. Them, it's, I think it's a help. I think it's
Yes. Well, actually, in your this line popped to me too. In the novel version of this, your mother's friend Marnie, if she's a real singular person or a concept, there was a line that she had. I think it was when she had to leave. She had her sort of profession going on, but left to take care of her mother, I think. And
Yeah.
she has this line where she says, your mom says to her, "What about your career?" And she says, "Life is long. You have to believe that, especially if you're a woman."
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Or is that part of where that comes
I
from?
think it's, Marley Mulligan is fictional.
Mm-hmm.
I will say she's, the idea, the germ of her is
Yeah.
real, but
Yeah.
that all the, it's all made up. Yeah, I get this a little bit of what I believe. I mean, I felt for Marnie Mulligan at that moment, and I wrote her in partly because I know so many women like that.
Yes.
And to this day, I mean, that was another generation, but in this generation too, in my generation, that story is extremely common, extremely common.
Yeah.
But I guess you do have to believe that, you do have to do that, and
there are many chapters, I think, is one thing that I've picked up in interviews that I've been doing, and then also just looking around. Like, there are different phases, whether you stay in the same profession or pivot around. Like, there's things ebb and flow and flex around other stuff.
and there's a lot of luck involved,
Yeah. Yes.
And
Yes.
that's true for the men as well. I mean, that's true for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of luck involved, although there's a lot of making your own luck too.
Yeah. Okay. There's one, I promise I read the entire book, but there's one section at the end of your author's note made me weep. And it raises a fundamental question, but I was going to read it if you wouldn't mind. Where you say, "I began this book as a memoir, and it probably would have stayed a memoir had I had more access to my mother's life. But because she left so little record of herself, I had to imagine a great deal. And as I am a novelist, many things happened as I did. Characters appeared, events shifted, an arc materialized, the narrative made demands. I love that. I have stayed as true as I could to the facts of my mother's life as I knew them, and my goal, to convey as honestly as possible our troubled relationship, remained the same throughout. Still, reader, do not be confused. This is reality transmuted. It tells a forged truth. Even from beyond the grave, my mother, as you will hear, objects to many of the liberties I take. At the same time, I like to think she would finally agree both that this book is a novel and that there might be some truth to it. And it really makes me, I think in that both you're just so fucking good at this. And also it's just so, to me, it pulls at this yearning to know something that you might never be able to fully know. And just your vulnerability to try to fill in the gaps. You're a prolific writer. You're brilliant. And yet there's this thing that you can't fully know. And this is sort of an attempt to explain it to her and back to yourself, and sort of, I don't know, it's something about it really was, I don't know, all of the little particles in the world aligned in that final line to me. And it also made me wonder if, and there might be too many to name, but like there might be some truth to it. What are the truths that meant the most to you as you wrote this?
Well, of course, the biggest truth probably, is that she herself had such a difficult relationship with her mother.
Yeah.
The very ways that she tried to bind me up were the ways that she was bound up.
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest truth, that basically what she did to me was what had been done to her. And she did not have therapy, you know what I mean? She didn't have anybody to kind of say, like, well, do you see the pattern? Nobody just sort of sat down and said, well, it's a family pattern here.
Yeah.
Well, and she's pretty overwhelmed, and she's Chinese,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's one of these things where and if, if this is not exactly what you've asked, but, having finished my book, I wish that I could see my mother one more time.
Yeah.
I really do. And I wish I could express to her all the sympathy that I have for her today. I think that, of course, when she was alive, I was still very much the daughter. She's the mother. Sure. One of the great gifts of being a writer, of course, is you get to transcend, your smaller self and, kind of look at your smaller self as kind of a larger self. And I wish that Gish Jen, the writer, could have been able to see, to meet with my mother once and give her a hug.
Yeah.
Of course, this is a podcast about mothers and in our lives. And for anybody who has a difficult relationship with their mother, I wish that books like mine, if there are many books like them, would help people kind of get to that place while their mothers are still alive.
Yeah.
Instead of getting to that place after they're dead. And if I have a big regret, it really is that, I've gotten here, but kind of too late. Late. And for those of us who have been so much luckier than my mother, like I see myself as a transition figure, so she had a very unlucky life. She was the luckiest member, as she would say, of an unlucky family. It was just really just luck. It could happen to any of us. You could have grown up in a world where there was a revolution, any of this stuff,
Yeah.
or in a culture that's just a lot less, female friendly.
Yeah.
I feel so lucky to have been the transition, in the transitional generation where, I both understand it, but I didn't have to live it entirely. It shaped my life, but it wasn't my life,
Yeah.
And I feel so happy to see the next generation. It appears much more free of this stuff, although not entirely.
Yeah.
And I hope that they will read books like this and, and have perspective on how they got to be where they are. And frankly, to be aware of things that could come back. I mean, because they could. In fact, they seem like they're on their way back even as we speak. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and to understand really what that means, I mean, honestly, my mother was a brilliant woman,
Yeah.
and I mean, I don't mean to boast, but today I have a very brilliant daughter.
Yeah.
And when I look at my very brilliant daughter, and I see that could have been my mother.
Oh, yes.
The whole idea that kind of like, whoa, that these are
Yeah.
kind of two people who are really actually very similar. And
Mm-hmm.
one has one kind of life and the other has a very different kind of life. It's a lot to grasp, honestly.
Yeah. So I'm curious, I wanted to ask about this kind of mothering across generations and what you're talking about being a transitional figure. And
Yeah.
to your great credit, you, in the novel version of this, you described your daughter, Paloma, telling you that she was aware of all that you had to carry and that you did, I think she said, you did a good job, which is incredibly meaningful. But also, how did you do that? I'm sure your story is an extreme version, and maybe is an extreme version that is probably maybe not uncommon to a lot of people, but people have their own version that's not maybe less extreme. But this idea of taking parenting that was literally abusive, and there were some, you've sort of harvested all of the goodness, and I think through the process of writing it, you say that you've seen it differently, kind of. But that's a lot to transition, like to convert into something more positive and show up in a different way for your kids. And I think a lot of how we parent is even subconsciously aware. There's stuff that you're consciously aware of, probably, to like, let's not do it that way. Then there's a subconscious component. But how in practice are you able to do that?
That's a complicated question. And first of all, obviously you have to be very aware of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you hear yourself sounding like your mother, you have to stop. You know what I'm saying? You have to take a time out. And
Yeah.
no, I mean that quite seriously. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you hear things coming out of your mouth, the funny thing is that I never told my daughter that she was a good girl either. Like I didn't. And I told my son that he was a bad boy.
Mm-hmm.
So my daughter sort of said, well, you never said either to me. And I'm sure that's because I was just being so careful with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't say that she was, I just didn't use any language like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
in a very, this is just a small thing, but we didn't use any evaluatory talk at all.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because we live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I was very aware that there's a lot of ambient pressure. And so I spent a lot of time kind of trying to protect my kids from the ambient pressure. You know what I mean? Later on, my daughter sort of said, like, oh, all my friends were sent to like gifted kid camp. Like, wasn't I gifted? And she was very gifted, but we didn't send her to gifted kid camp. You know what I mean? In other words, never did any of those things that, that suggested there's like an evaluatory framework here. We just kind of left them alone. They didn't do Suzuki violin or anything even slightly like that. I mean, in that way, maybe I was kind of drawing on my own wild childhood, in the woods. I mean, I didn't, or maybe because of that, I had faith that they could run around in the woods and do nothing. And they would be fine. And so like I say, there were no fancy camps. There were none of that stuff, and certainly no tutors or anything like that.
Yeah.
All I ever said to my kids, and they will sort of tell you this, is that I always said to them, have fun, And when they were a little older, I said, but not too much fun. And as I was into the drug age, just like, oh.
Yeah.
But and I also, because I think I had seen among the adults, I will say that a lot of people, because I know a lot of very high achieving people, and it seemed to be a lot of them had really forgotten how to have fun.
Yes.
And I really mean, and I could sort of see in my heart of hearts, I felt like my kids are going to be fine.
Yes.
I wanted them to remember how to have fun.
I think that's what I've always noticed and enjoyed about you the most, is that, I mean, some version of my background. I've always been around these very, heads on sticks that are very important. And I agree. Like, it's not that serious sometimes. Like we can have our deep thoughts but that's also, let's not just study fun. Let's also experience it and do it.
Fun.
Yes.
Well, because, and then fundamentally, you can do that, if you fundamentally think you're your kids are going to be fine. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
America, I think it's another thing, that I think that I would say that my ability, if I have had that, well, okay, my kids would give me an A. You know what I mean? I will say. Um, I mean, my kids are very happy and very happy with the way that they were brought up, and I never hear any complaining about anything really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so they're very happy. But I would say that that my ability to be this person is very much a result of being in the reading, writing world, and also having fantastic friends. My mother was one of them.
Yeah.
But it's funny. For my 70th birthday, I gathered some of my friends. From way back, and I have just been spectacularly lucky in the friendships that I've made, and one incredible person after the next, honestly. And I wasn't choosing them. I was in 6th grade.
Yeah.
I'm not choosing them because they're going to go on to be. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just, but really, 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 serious, but also just good people. I mean, really good people. Do you know what I mean? Like good people. You would entrust this country to them in a minute. You know what I mean? You would never hesitate.
Yeah.
And so I was very lucky, and I think I learned from them, and then I think from books, I got a lot of perspective. The kind of perspective that I'm sort of saying I eventually attained myself on my mother, but I think I had already attained it on the world. You could sort of see I'm not so because of all that reading. You do have this. You're not so likely to get sucked into some narrative that other people are about to have. Like they all must go to this preschool.
Yeah.
I would say thanks to reading, much less likely to get sucked in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also because, like I said, I myself had grown up in this completely wild way.
You've seen a lot too. Yeah, I actually was curious.
In a funny kind of way, it gives you kind of independence.
Yeah. Yeah. In the book, you credit the fictional version of your father sort of with your sense of humor. And I was curious how, to this point, like you've seen a lot, you've been around a lot. One could see all of that and think, oh, wow, it's like really bad. But I feel it and be down about it. You sort of seem to hold on to, there's a light in you that like remains jocular about these things. Is that was that your father? Where does that come from?
So I will say that the father is, it's not all of my father, and I mean, it's that version of my father.
Yeah,
but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. My father's pretty close, and my father, it really did have a tremendous sense of humor, which I have to say I think is genetic. I mean, I say because my husband will tell you. I mean, I will have a funny dream and be laughing in the middle of the night, It's really funny. And, as he had, which, he had, so he was very kind of, he had a great sense of humor, and I think I have inherited some part of that.
Yeah.
And that also, he had a tremendous kind of independence, which, it's not, we don't associate that so much with the Chinese culture, we see the other part, from here. But I would actually, maybe I shouldn't make a generalization like this kind of on your podcast. Well, okay, I'll go ahead and jump off the cliff. I actually think that one of the reasons that the Chinese culture is so kind of, the official culture is so repressive is because the Chinese character is so impossible and actually uncontrollable and wild. I
love this take.
I really think
I bet you're probably right.
A really great example of this, in Shanghai, they'll like they'll take a street and they'll say, okay, this is now one way. And all that happens is the students keep on doing toward it, but they just come up the sidewalks. It's just like they're coming up the sidewalks at like 40 miles an hour. And and then finally they give up, and then the street just quietly goes back to being two-way,
Yeah.
And basically, they can't really, they cannot get these people to listen, It's not like here where everyone's brought up to be law-abiding. They don't really, the basic Chinese character is not very law-abiding. It's like the emperor's
Yes,
rules for the emperor's far away. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of,
yes,
you don't pay
totally.
any attention to these rules. You know what I mean? Today is this rule, tomorrow's that rule. You don't have to pay any attention.
Yeah,
So I think that, like I said, I think it's one of the reasons it's so repressive. They have structures to try
yeah,
to get these people to, to listen.
yeah.
And so, so you have both. And I think that you can definitely see the very unruly, a great metaphor for this, the very famous Chinese character in Chinese mythology is the monkey. The Monkey King was very, very wild, and he's around with a monk,
Got
and
it.
the monk puts this headband around his head, and whenever the monkey is wild, he tightens the headband.
Yeah.
The headband is the Chinese state.
Yeah.
The monkey is kind of the Chinese people.
Yeah.
I would say that monkey is very much my father. Yeah, my father, very much this very kind of
Interesting.
Wild person.
Did you ever think, or would you have ever thought to write this version of this book about your father relationship or / your loose relationship?
I think that's one of the books I still have to write. That's
Okay. Oh, I'm excited.
He said, I didn't have the fraught relationship. As you can gather, that was the opposite. My father thought I walked on water.
Yeah.
Everything I did was right, and even when I did something, he really would have loved to see me go into real estate, and I did not do that. So even when I did things that were not what he would have loved to see me do, there was no repercussions. I mean, I knew that's what he wanted me to do, but it's not like he ever even said to me, I wish that you would dump. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He would never have said anything like that.
Yeah.
And I would do these things that were really not his plan, or and then he wouldn't stop me. As you know, he's very supportive. When I went out to the Iowa workshop, my father came.
I know, that was beautiful.
He had no idea what this is and what what was going on and what I was doing.
Yeah. A theme that we like to get into a little bit is is identity. And the idea being you are professional people. You also are trying to navigate motherhood and career, which all kind of potentially pull you away from who you are in the middle of all these things. You become a mother and you're a parent to kids. You are a professional person and you have your professional identity, but sort of Gish in this context maybe gets lost a little bit. I think it's, not to put words in your mouth, I think there's something unique about your profession being so tied to your identity, hypothetically, that it doesn't feel as lost. But I was curious if you could talk a little bit about how you came to forge your own identity and your sense of self. And was that around immigrant context, parent context, mothering, career, writer? Like, was when you became Gish Jen as opposed to Lillian, was that a pivotal moment, or was it not as singular as that?
No, it was when I became Gish Jen. That was a big moment, and this has to do with this independence. I will say that this is maybe backing up, but growing up between cultures also, can either be kind of a fracturing, very upsetting thing, or like I say, it's a structural whole. So, I grew up in a time when what did it mean to be Asian American? Nobody knew. We didn't have the word. There was no phrase Asian American. We were still Orientals when I grew up.
Right.
But, and you could look at that as being very upsetting and disconcerting, or you could sort of say, like, you have a blank slate. And it's very fostering of independence. Is what I'm saying. So I was kind of my own person, and kind of sui generis from very early on because of my background. So when I got to Harvard, I wasn't like anybody else. I didn't look like anybody else. I didn't think like anybody else. I didn't. I was my own person, which was very. Which actually, of course, segued very easily into becoming a writer and writing what I wanted, and so in that way, that part wasn't hard, but for me, it wasn't that hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I circle professionally. I mean, sometimes people sort of say, "This is too funny." I just remember my editor, who was, my editor for 30 years, was really wonderful, incredibly supportive the whole way. Every now and then she would say, humor a little broad.
I like that saying.
So, those are the kinds of things that I struggle with.
Yeah.
And what I do remember, and this is not exactly what you're asking, but I do remember when I had kids that I made a very definite conscious decision to put them first. And I looked around, so you could sort of see the independence, it's always, I look around.
Yeah.
Look around in the same way I sort of see a lot of adults who don't really know how to have fun.
Yeah.
I look around and I see a lot of people who basically, they really made their kids pay for their careers. And I just sort of said, I will not put my kids on the altar of art. I won't. And I didn't, and I'm sure I paid. And
how did you? What sort of do you feel like those are sacrifices, or like what are some examples of things?
It's like well, first of all, just I did get my work done, but it didn't come at their expense. They had my full attention. In fact, that one of my fellow mothers used to remark on that, and they would sort of say, whenever the kids come, you give them your full attention. So whatever's going on, if they come to me, they have my full attention, and they never had to fight for my attention. They were always first.
Yeah,
they knew that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't like, I wouldn't have said that's what I was doing, but other people commented on it, and I can see today that not all parents do that, and I think that, but and then in terms of, working my own work around that, I would give up. I did get my work done, but it didn't mean giving up a lot of personal comfort and, all those kind of like, you need to take care of yourself, voices. I ignored those,
Got it.
That meant that, honestly, I didn't bathe very often. I'm very lucky. I'm not very smelly. It was a very lucky thing because I did not have time. I think that, I had a very kind of clear, but, professionally, I'm sure to this day, I think about the books I didn't blurb. Not only that, I didn't even write a note back to sort of say I wasn't going to blurb it. And I'm sure, a lot of those people are mad at me to this day.
Yeah.
They're still mad at me.
Yeah.
And I can't, there's no way that I could explain to them, especially if they didn't have children, what it was to have these two very large commitments, one being to children, the second being to your work. And
maybe your husband.
Just doing sorry,
I said maybe your husband also. I don't know.
My husband very happily was nothing.
Yeah.
He was not very demanding. But but it's kind of like, you have these two things, and just to stay afloat, there isn't a lot of extra. I didn't have, having grandparents who could help is huge. I didn't have grandparents on either side.
Yeah.
And no grandparent help, and we weren't independently wealthy either. So working class on one side, immigrants on the other side. We did not have a lot of resources, and it's hard to explain. And I did make it through, and here I am today in one piece. And everyone is still mad. In their minds, I was this, I don't know what, this figure. And, I always felt like, I am like swimming as hard as I can. And I swim, and then I fall asleep, and then I swim some more.
Yes.
And I always just felt like I can only do what I do. And if people are still mad at me, then, oh, well.
Good for you. Yes. I wanted to ask, you talked about, and it sounds simple, but it's very hard. To dropping everything and just being present for your kids in the moments that they need you, or when you are with them, you are fully with them. Related to that is this thing around kind of generational evolution as well. You craved knowing your mom.
Yeah.
And I was curious about, and it's funny, I interviewed my mom on this podcast, and I found it very therapeutic in a certain way, where I could ask her these questions that I otherwise kind of would never have a chance to, or never make sense, or be awkward and uncomfortable. But So she, in that conversation, became far more known to me than she, in certain ways, ever was. And I'm curious how you think about being known to your kids, which was so important to you. But is that just you? It's maybe it just comes naturally to you. I think there are, and I don't know, my mom was not, and is becoming more that way. But I think as people think about, being your full authentic self in every part of your life, and yet there are kind of boundaries along the way. Like, how do you feel like your kids would confidently say, my mom is known to me. I know her. I know who she is. I know what she's about. And how did it happen?
I would, well, just partly it's my personality. I'm an open book. I'm an open book. And I feel that way, not just because I must tell them everything.
Yeah.
But again, looking around, I have seen that, parents who protect their kids from this, that, or the other thing, in the end, it just makes the kids nervous.
Yeah.
There's something they don't know, And so, I know I have friends who have, who have hidden any number of things from their kids. And if asked, my advice would always be the same, which is just like, do not hide things from your children. Yeah. First of all, they will find out eventually.
Yeah.
And they'll wonder what else you hid from them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, I think that it's more important for them to trust you.
Yeah.
And so my kids, there's not going to be any, they're never going to die. They're not going to find out that, I was having an affair, whatever.
Yeah.
Not anything like that. I think that I know a lot less about them.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes.
But that's fair too. I mean, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, I think, children have to establish their lives and it can't, and, if they're dating some new person or something, they don't want their first thing,
Healthy attachment. Good job.
Yeah. That's okay.
Okay, I know we're running towards the end of this. We like to shift to these slightly standardized questions, but one of them gets at this concept of having it all, and can women have it all in particular? And I was reflecting on this question in the context of your book, which you repeatedly talked about from an immigrant lens. Your parents and family would talk about moments where we made it. And that was often framed around having a home, and moving to the suburbs, whatever. So I didn't know if I was giving you the option. I don't know if it's true, but how would that context, do you think about having it all? Does the idea of we made it, are those similar to you?
No, I don't. I don't have those kinds of ideas. Of course, it's easy for me to not focus on them because I have a house. Do you know what I mean? In other words, I'm very lucky that way.
Yeah.
And so I don't think of it that way.
Yeah.
I do know, even now, I know people who, must buy a certain kind of car or something. I am, as you might guess, not one of those people. I really don't care. It's fine with me.
Yeah.
So I think, at least, maybe this is not the right answer to your question, but at least, because, I'm about your mom's age. And, at this age, I am mostly focused on being happy and trying to let go of what I need to let go of in order to be happy. Do you know what I mean? And that includes whatever expectation about your children, your grandchildren, your friends, you know what I mean? In other words, whatever it is, I guess it's not about having it all. It's like some picture that you have, you're trying to get to. It's this, realizing that, in life, you don't get to have it all. And some things, are just not meant to be for you.
Yeah.
And you can't let that bother you. You've got to just let go of it, whatever it is, whether it was, you thought your garden would be beautiful. I tell you, this year, none of our vegetables came up.
Yeah. I love that. It's not having, it's letting go. I love that's
anyway. So it's much more in letting go of my pride. I now have an electric bike. I mean, I never thought I'd be the kind of person riding around on a goddamn electric bike. I discovered I let go of my pride, and I'm having a
Yeah.
good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, with the electric bike, because I had much more fun on electric bike than I could possibly have on a regular
Yeah.
bike.
Yeah.
And I just let go of it,
Mm,
and so that's much more where I am.
I love that. Um, okay, two short answer questions. Feel free to speak as long as you want or have time to, but you're free
Mm.
to also be short. If you could go back and tell your new mom self
Ooh.
one thing, what would it be?
Oh, well, it sounds so trite, but I was like, God, it goes so fast.
Yeah.
Oh my God, and you can't take enough pictures. I tell you, you guys are so lucky because of the iPhone.
Right.
Oh my God, I wish we had taped like 10 million times more than we did.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at those, the movies that we have, I mean, where are they? Those children, I mean, I have the older versions,
Aw.
but where are those children? And
Yeah.
I would kill to have them back for a nanosecond.
Oh, yes. Yes. And then lastly, your kids may be listening to this live, or one day they'll listen to this conversation. Is there anything you'd like to say to them?
Oh my God, I love those children so much. And I think they know that. I mean, they know that. I mean, that's, I mean, yeah, no, I mean, they are. And, and let me just sort of say that, and I have had a great career. I mean, or I am having, I hope, but it's ups and downs. I mean, it's not, but okay, everybody should be 70 and have their 10th book come out.
Yeah.
And, and know that, more likely than not, if I write another book, Knopf will publish it. That's huge.
Yep.
And it's huge. And so everybody should be sitting in my seat. But I tell you, when, the things that really make your heart just glow, I mean, your whole heart just lights up. It's still the children, it's still the children. It is still the children. I see those children, and, I really, truly, I can hardly put in words. And now I have a grandchild. Oh my God. I know
Yeah.
all grandchildren are cute. I mean, is there an 18-month old cute? Boy, but when it's your grandchild, I mean, that is the cutest child who's ever walked on the face of this earth.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and I think that I do think that, it's careers are important. And I'm the first to say that's why we're here, and women careers, and everyone should have meaningful work. And that's really important. Really, 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 really important. But not neglect the other side.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's and so I guess. Yeah, and I would hope I don't say I would hope because I know my children know that. Like, they don't have to listen to this podcast. They know. They know. They know.
Well, you're a good mom.
A terrible daughter. Oh my gosh, it's true.
Gish, this was so fun. Thank you for doing this, especially spontaneously in the middle of breakfast.
I'm glad we connected, and I saw that other email.
Oh my God, yes.
No, you're kidding.
Yes. And I won't go back and see if it was clearly my fault, but thank you for tolerating whatever it was.
I'm sure it was mine, Sarah. I'm sure. Anyway.
Well, thank you. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day.
Oh, thank you. You too. And this podcast is cool, and I'm glad
We're trying.
What?
We're trying.
It's cool. It's cool. It's cool. I'm sure you're gonna have a huge audience.
Yes.
Because you and about 100 million other people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Oh, Gish, what a legend. Let me give V a call and tell her all about it.
I need you to know before we have impactful lesson learning conversations that I'm watching the trashiest, dumbest show. Have you heard of Girls 5 Ever?
No, but how punny.
It's so bad. Sara Bareilles is in it, is an actress, and also I want to say Rainn Wilson. That's not her name. Her name is Busy Phillips.
Oh, I love
And it's so mindless and would be delicious for you if you need to disconnect, but it's really bad. It's great.
I'm going to get
So-
on that. Funny, doesn't take her life or herself too
Hell
seriously,
yes.
but also does serious things. Gish Jen,
Tell me about Gish
who is
Jen.
a friend of my mother's in the world of me, like sitting around among these, which I didn't know when I was a child,
Mm,
like sitting in these rooms of all these writers.
isn't that crazy?
She was one of
Wow.
them. She's incredible. And I love her writing. I love how she writes. It's full of truth and brave truth and fun things. And I don't know, breaks the mold of great literature, can also be written in a way that is, as opposed to needing to be so complicated. Like her complexity is in the directness, being able to be direct without it being offensive or being like unreadable. And boring.
Yes.
Anyway, so she wrote this amazing book, Bad Bad Girl, which is a fictionalized memoir rooted in the relationship between her and her mother, who grew up in China, moved to the U.S. when she, like, I don't know, 20 something, maybe younger, I forget. And in the backdrop, like, China's going through like various revolutions and World War II and all these things. So then comes onto the scene. Eventually has 5 kids. Anyway, so she's amazing. Everyone should read all of her stuff, including Bad Bad Girl. But here was what was cool. She was very focused on got into a lot of like cross-generational mothering and how essentially she had a very, in a generalized way, sort of culturally Chinese parenting experience, probably maybe even to an extreme, perhaps, like very much about kind of training kids and disciplining kids, and a little bit absent, as she's described it too, was that this was not like a tiger mom scenario.
Sure.
This was a I forgot to bring you to anything scenario, and in that Gish thrived despite all of that. But a lot of what she talked about in her real life is thinking about how to kind of morph and evolve and be a bridge to a better way to parent her own kids, which I thought was interesting. A lot of people, this was like an extreme version of like things were not really bad, and then how do we make them better for as we parent our own kids. But I thought it was a really interesting experience because it's very relatable and universal, and all of us are trying to figure out how do we take the good and not the bad and transfer that onto their kids. And within it all, she talked 2 things were the importance of being present for your kids, which once before in some other conversation too, which basically like when your kids need you, like you are fully present and you are 100% with them, as opposed to trying to be doing multiple things at once and having a phone in your hand, which I'll often do, which is terrible. And it's so like the simple but hard kind of thing. And within that, she talked about how she did make some sacrifices and trade-offs and didn't not follow through. She didn't agree to do certain things professionally so that she could be there for her kids, which she very intentionally said once I had kids, she was like, kids are like my first priority and my career is second. I thought was interesting and noble, and obviously also worked out. Like she still found a way to do all this. This is her book. She's considered like the next John Updike, which people don't need to know who that is, but he's sort of like the writer of American fiction, particularly in short stories. He wrote this like trilogy around Rabbit Run. Anyway, also a very sort of Harvard orientation, which is fine. But I thought that was important to hear her say, as someone who's kind of on the end of it, not on the end of it, but on the other side of all the insanity of like looking back, that really makes sense. And yeah, the other thing that she said at the very end, so I'm biased towards it, but I asked her this question around having it all, which we love. And her take on it was that her focus is really now on,
Can you hear me?
letting things go and letting go what doesn't make her happy. And I thought that was really a good way to think about. It's not about like accumulating and like assembling different parts of you. It's actually more about letting go in the woo-woo version. It's like, let go of things that don't serve you. But letting go, I thought, was such a nice, like letting go of expectations, letting go of unnecessary responsibilities, letting go of things that are basically the shoulds of life and doing just what you want. I thought that was like something we hadn't heard before in the answering of that question.
That's really
liked it.
powerful.
Buddhist.
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned this, but like, what a simple thing to do and hard thing, or simple thing to say and hard thing to do, of letting go of those things, particularly given her upbringing. It would be easy to not be able to do those things because it's probably exact opposite of like what she observed and then learned. And so being able to do that, like, it feels so obvious. Of course, just like let go of those things. But how do you actually, did she give you like tangible that, like, how does she do that? Or does she just do
She talked about, it was this kind of like letting go. It was lists of sort of expectations, like letting go of meeting essentially others' expectations or letting go of the little things, like, I don't know, letting the house be messy. That kind of stuff. So yeah, I thought that was a really nice, wise thing.
I love that.
And I put it a little bit in the context of she's, as I said, her parents immigrated, like they were sort of very much living this immigrant experience. And at least as it was told in this non-memoir fictional account of a version of her upbringing, there were repeated moments where there was this sort of this phrase of like, we made it. And oriented around like sort of having a home for their family. And I was just curious, like to ask to her, like, is that the lens through which you think about having it all, or is it unrelated? And she did not say there was a direct line, but there might be some subconsciously a way of seeing that as a letting go. Like, we don't need to have all these things. Let go of the things that don't make you happy. Yeah, it was great. Very wise. I know she did good. I think the other piece too was that she was very aware certainly of herself and how she is, but also she repeatedly talked about this, like, I would ask these questions of like, how did you know to do this? Or how did you kind of end generational trauma, sort of, as best you could, that kind of stuff. She's like, well, I would kind of look up and around and see how other kids were doing and how their parents were.
Wow.
And take lessons from that. The other thing to that point, she also talked about, she's like, I look around like all these adults, we like forget how to have fun. And I was like, this is why I like you.
Yep.
And she's an incredibly serious person. She like was on the MacArthur board. She's brilliant. She's taught at Harvard. She's like done all these things. And I think it's nice to say you can be fun and smart.
Yes. You could do both of these. Like being funny and having fun doesn't mean you're stupid or ignorant or blind to like the realities of life and everything. Those two things can coexist and actually probably strengthen ultimately one another, right? Like being able to have that balance, being able to see things are serious, but it's ultimately not that serious, right? And so like when you put this pressure on yourself to be like perfect and have all this like, I don't know, max performance and 100% and all that, like if you take that pressure away from yourself, oftentimes, at least personally, I notice that like I do better in those situations because I'm not like so freaked out about the consequences, where I'm like, okay, like let's see how this goes. Let's see what happens. And then it's like, oh, turns out I could do that thing.
Totally.
Yeah. So what is her ultimate like relationship? Like what a heavy thing to write about, especially after becoming a parent. What was her ultimate relationship like with her mother?
I'm glad you asked this, because this was one of the more poignant things that happened earlier on in the conversation, where she was like, she's like, after writing this book, it makes me wish I could have one more conversation with her. So her parents both have passed away. Her mom passed away, I think, around COVID times. And yeah, she was like, I wish I could ask these questions and more, not even more the questions, but she's like, I wish I could go to her with an understanding of what she was grappling with and say, I'm sorry. Which is a really call to action for
Yep.
anyone that's
Yeah.
listening. I don't know. Some parents don't have that way. And she was now saying that, like, to her kids, she's like, I'm incredibly known to my kids. Get me, they know me. Like, we did yeah. I think the idea of being able to, even when it feels, I mean, there's some resistance that many people would have to it, but like, if you can find a way to have that conversation before it's too late, either parent has died or parent is no longer kind of has the capacity to have that conversation. Like, that's
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I love what you said that she had said of like, they know me and they know things. I think kind of reminds me of the conversation we had with Rebecca Love, where it's like, you don't have to tell your kids everything and they don't have to know everything that's going on, but being like showing vulnerability or insecurity and like, I'm not all knowing, or this is a scary thing that's happening and we'll be okay, is so powerful. And it's something that like we tend to not do because it's like, well, I don't want to put that on my kids, or I want to protect them and I want to guard them from all bad feelings and whatever. Where like, that's not the reality of life, right? Like, the reality is like, life can be hard and it's awesome. Life will throw you challenges and you could be okay. Like, and so I don't know, having difficult conversations with your kids while you're here is so cool. And it's one of those things like, I don't know, when you hear it from other people, like, I definitely feel that way. Like, I wish that I wrote things down that my mom said, or asked her about her childhood and what she wishes was different or whatever. But it's hard to live that intensity every day. But this is like, yeah, like you said, a call to action, a good reminder of like, well, maybe today you can have one brief conversation and write it down and remember it and like just do your best whenever you can.
Yeah.
No.
Totally. I know people do. I mean, it should be sort of part and parcel with like the discussion of wills and like the logistics of death and what happens. But I think people are a little almost able to be doing those, even though it's hard. Like, it should be like whoever is overseeing that should also give tips for having that more meaningful conversation. It's not about like who gets this chair or that chair and like who inherits my debt / wealth, whatever, but also know each other before it's
late. I love, they're so like, not tacky, but like, I don't know what it's called, but there's these companies now that give prompts for like a book. It's like my life or whatever. And it's like every day your parents can write a little response or anecdote or whatever. And I'm like, honestly, genius. What a beautiful thing. And maybe they could sponsor us because I do think it is. Yeah. I think like it's, I think it's a beautiful thing. I'm like, your kids deserve to see all parts of you, and like whether or not they take away a lesson from it or they have to ultimately, make the same mistake, whatever, like that is valuable, powerful, beautiful conversation. Oh, Gish. How cool, huh?
amazing.
Well, sounds like a great conversation.
Well, I'm excited for everyone to hear this. It really was a great conversation. Yeah. She was also a trooper because there was some mix up on the date.
Oh no.
And so she was like,
hello?
She's like, I'm in the middle. I'm literally having breakfast. Like, I'm out of bed having breakfast, but I'll jump on. I'm really hoping it wasn't my fault. And I feel bad.
Maybe that's like a good, I don't know, like that's the perfect natural way to have these conversations that we're looking to have with people. Like, it doesn't need to be buttoned up and like dressed up in your Sunday best at a desk. It's like, no, like sit where you're comfy and like tell me your feelings. So that's
I totally agree.
No.
Yes.
Maybe that's what Mandy for
unintentionally nailed it.
Everyone should be in their cozy PJs in their bed, just like being comfortable and feeling like they're like tossing their feet around talking to their bestie, because that's where like the good stuff happens. So she set a new tone. I love it.
I know. Exactly. See, lead again.
Your joy?
All right. 30 seconds, joy. What's going on in life? We're going to New York City this weekend. In the big bad city. I always feel energized after being in the city. I love our oldest always just like describes himself as a city boy.
I love
because
that.
I don't know, 18 months of his life living in like the Back Bay South End. And they were specifically the first 18 months, which like how city could you be? But he's a city boy, and so I'm excited to bring the city boy to a bigger city. So that'll be fun. I think that's
I love that.
change of
Oh,
scenery.
that's good.
Yeah.
My joy is that our favorite event of the year is happening Friday. The Topsfield Fair does like the largest pumpkin weighing contest where you see like 300, 400, 500-pound pumpkins being weighed. And it's all these farmers from like all over the East Coast, and they weigh them on pallets. And it's just hilarious to watch. And I'm very excited to go. So that's my joy.
That's a great
Yes.
good. Pumpkin Palace and to fry.
Truly.
Ah,
Well,
you're
go
the best.
enjoy therapy. I love you.
Thank you so
It's
much.
going to be great.
This is all therapy. This is great.
From
content
one
for
therapy to another.
Seriously. So let's talk about mom.
I love it. Amazing. Enjoy.
I love you so
Love
much.
you.
Love
Bye.
you. Love you. All right. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode and we can reach even more rock stars like you. The Mothers is a production of Backline Media, shining a light on those who carry the team.